every day out upon the waters deep and wide. But it all is over now. Glory light is on my brow, and my soul is on the winning side. Oh, I will never have a fear, for my Lord is ever near, and in him so often I confide. He's the keeper of my soul, since I gave him full control, and he placed me on the winning side. Well, I am on the winning side. Yes, I'm on that winning side. Out in sin no more will I abide. I've enlisted in the fight for the cause of truth and right. Oh, praise the Lord, I'm on the winning side. I've enlisted in the fight for the cause of truth and right. Oh, praise the Lord, I'm on the winning side. I'm on his side. Once my soul was astray from that heavenly way, and was wretched and vile as could be. But my Savior in love gave me peace from above, when he reached down his hand for me. When my Savior reached down for me, he had to reach way down for me. I was lost and undone, without God or his wonderful Son, when he reached down his hand for me. I was near to despair when he came to me there, and he showed me that I could be free. Then he lifted my feet and gave me gladness complete, when he reached down his hand for me. How my heart does rejoice, oh, when I hear his sweet voice in the tempest. To him I flee, there to lean on his arm.
Okay. OPBC Online, a ministry of Old Paths Baptist Church in Northfield, Minnesota. We are live. It is 2:18 p.m. Central Time here, but not where Brother George Widger is. And I'm going to introduce to you Brother George Widger. And if you've never heard him before, he has done broadcasts with Brother Eric John Phelps, a friend of mine and a colleague that in this war against the Jesuits, in this battle against the New World Order and the wicked works of darkness. And I appreciate Brother Widger coming on. Him and he's followed my ministry a lot longer than I even knew about him. I didn't realize that, but he had been listening to our sermons way back. So, Brother Widger, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody, and then let them know who you are and kind of where you've come from in this battle versus truth versus error out here, and we'll go from there.
Well, where shall I begin?
It all started at your birth when don't start. No, I'm kidding. Start when you first figured out. Well, first of all, yeah. How did you come to research this, the works of darkness, the Jesuit order, all these things? How did you get there?
Well, I'm glad you didn't want me to go all the way back to my birth, because my recollection is somewhat vague.
I bet it is.
Oh, okay. So, how did I come down, tracking down the so-called Society of Jesus and the Vatican, the Rome, and all that sort of stuff? Well, I'll just try to give the Reader's Digest version. I've always had an interest in history.
Okay.
From, I guess, like 7 or 8 years old. I'm 57. And much to my chagrin, roughly around the time you were born, that's when you, Jason Cooley, were born. Like you're talking like 1976, 1970.
That's correct.
The 4th of November, if I'm not mistaken, 1976.
The second, but that's pretty close, man.
I beg your pardon. So you're coming up on the big 5-0, and I guess about 5 months or so.
I am, yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Well, I beat you to it. Don't worry. Yes, it's as bad as they say it is, and it only goes down from there.
Great.
Okay, so like around 1976, 1977, roughly around the time you were born, I developed an acute interest in history, largely due to World War II and what was on television at the time. Yeah, this old TV show called Black Sheep Squadron, or Bob Black Sheep. In the 1976, the original version of Midway came out. And I remember seeing the movie Tora 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 on television for the first time. The movie Tora 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 was made in 1970. And I developed a fascination with World War II. Initially with the Pacific, Pearl Harbor, Midway, and the campaigns like Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima and that sort of stuff. Then it expanded to the rest of the world, Europe and so forth. And so for about half a century or so, I've had this interest in not only history, but current events. Now, granted, it is mostly false history and inaccurate current events.
Mm-hmm.
And, as 7 or 8 years old, I knew who the president was. Well, it was initially Jerry Ford at the time, then Jimmy Carter. And I've always had an interest in politics and that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, my politics were a bit left of center growing up as a teenager.
Was that growing up in California? Is that why, or was that where you grew up?
Well, yes. I was born in New York, but I grew up in California, and so
you didn't stand a chance, did you?
I was a goner. Yes. So I went to schools in California, K through 12. And as I said, I've always had this interest in history. So as a preteen, I was interested in World War II, but as a teenager, I developed an interest in the 1960s. So I decided to skip over the entire 1950s because, after all, nothing of importance took place in that decade, except for, the Korean War, the French Indo-Chinese War, Sputnik, the space race. A few things took place in the of interest in the 19. So, but I'm not answering your question. So, looking at various things, World War II, all the battles, all the conflicts, and what happened during the war between the states, the American Civil War, something always struck me as odd, because it seemed as if all these generals and admirals were incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
They always attacked in the wrong place, and they made decisions that got the most number of men killed.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're talking World War II, World War One, the American Civil War, that always struck me as odd. So I wasn't a conspiracy theorist, and well, technically speaking, I'm not one either. But gee, it seems if the more inept you are as a general or admiral, the more rewarded you are.
Yeah, the higher up you go. What's going on with that, right?
Yes, and I noticed this decades ago, long before I'd heard of you or Eric John Phelps or anything like that, and that always struck me as odd. And all right, so fast forward to more recent times. Um, well, I'd heard of the Jesuits probably 40 years ago. I
Mm-hmm.
knew they were a religious order of the Catholic Church, and they came about during the Protestant Reformation about 500 years ago. And I knew a little bit about Ignatius of Loyola, and I knew that hundreds of years ago they had been involved with all sorts of skullduggery, like
Yep.
the gunpowder plots, um, the Spanish Armada, the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. But I was thinking to myself, like most people who had ever heard of the Jesuits, that was hundreds of years ago over in Europe, and they have no impact on what's going on in the world today.
Right. They
Like,
kind of just fold it up. It doesn't matter. So what's that got to do with today, right?
yes. So other movements like the Nazis, they just popped up in Germany in the 1930s like mushrooms.
Right.
Yeah, so, and that had nothing to do with the Vatican or the Jesuits or the Knights of Malta or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, something I was wondering about, 15, 20 years ago, but I said there seems to be a pattern in history. I don't know what it is, but it seems as if that there has to be some sort of entity, some sort of
Mm-hmm.
organization that's responsible. Yes, we can talk about it in a spiritual sense, but there has to be boots on the ground.
Right. There has to be some physical representation of what these spirits are leading.
Yes.
Right.
And so, years ago, 30 years ago, I'd heard of these groups like the Illuminati or the Trilateral Commission. And I just say, well, this is a pre-internet era, or at least it was for me. So maybe these groups existed at one time, but that was a long time ago. And the Trilateral Commission was actually founded by Zbigniew Brzezinski in 1973.
Mm-hmm.
Zbigniew Brzezinski was a Polish-born uh, conservative Catholic. I'm not sure how much your listeners know about him, but among other things, he was it the National Security Advisor under Jimmy Carter. He went to Loyola High School in Montreal, Canada.
So basically, you're starting to see these links between like Roman Catholicism, these Jesuit universities, these educated people. You're starting to see there's some sort of a pattern here that's forming.
Yes. However, I had a hard time seeing it, but it wasn't until about a decade ago, 2015, 2016, when I started listening to Eric John Phelps.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually was turned on to him by you because.
So it's my fault.
Okay, yes. You made reference to Vatican assassins. And
Yeah.
I said, that's interesting. I need to go check that out. And I found an online copy, like most people, and I read it. And then I came across his video series where he did basically the video version of Vatican assassins.
Very good. There's one broadcast that he did that I highly recommend that everybody should listen to. I've got to remember it now. But it was a 3-hour one that was on a radio. It wasn't a video, it was a radio one. A Hagman and Hagman report. That is, I have listened to that thing like 10 times, and that is one of the best historical verbal history of the Jesuit order and their modern day implications, and probably anything I've heard, and that's why I recorded more with him later. But anyway, go on. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay, so I just realized we probably won't get to most of the material I presented, and we're just doing a basic background. So,
oh no, we'll get to a ton. We'll get to a ton of it. We can keep pressing on. We got. Hey, if you got time, I got time, man. We'll just go and we'll get to Minnesota. But what I want to do is introduce people to you a little bit. So we could back and forth talk about some of these things, and then we could get into Minnesota. I titled this "How the Jesuits Control the Twin Cities," and we'll get into that for sure. But I just want people to understand that this guy didn't just fall off a rock somewhere, roll off a rock somewhere. I didn't find him underneath somewhere. This is somebody that's been studying these things. And so let's go with this. So you find Eric John Phelps, and through listening to the broadcast that I did, and the sermons, and you heard that, and then you heard me mention Vatican assassins, and then you started doing broadcasts. How many years ago did you start doing broadcasts with Brother Phelps?
Okay, well, he wasn't my actually. So you're talking about midway 2019, like June, July 2019. So about 7 years.
Okay.
Before that, I've been doing streams with Johnny Cerrucci, and I realized Johnny and Eric don't see eye to eye, and I'm not going to broach that.
No, that's okay. Yep.
And so I heard of Johnny probably about the same time, like 2016.
Yep.
And I started corresponding with him in 2017, and he invited me on in 2018. So I started doing streams. But, that means I need to prepare material. So, gee, what am I going to talk about? So,
yeah.
So it's just like, it's usually, whether it's with Eric or with Johnny, the problem is having too much material.
Yep.
You need, even if you have 2 or 3 hours available, you need to make it digestible.
Absolutely.
Okay, so over the last decade or so, through listening to various people, and studying, I look up current events, and it seems as that almost everything is either manipulated or manufactured in terms of, say, current events.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's an explosion, a shooting, an assassination attempt, whatever.
And that's an interesting point, Brother George. Let me interrupt you just for a moment here, okay, and say this, that people need to realize that some of these things are manufactured and other things are manipulated to make certain things happen, right? And if you don't get those two down, you'll think that everything is just kind of this, nothing's real, but there are some things that are actually, but they take the substance of something that's real and they manipulate it. Like Hillary Clinton said, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Well, case in point, just talking about things that have taken place recently. January the 6th, 2021, that made for television movie. I'll just call it that.
Absolutely.
I've heard people call it the Fedsurrection.
Yes.
And because this is something the FBI or similar organizations have been doing for decades.
Yep.
So the majority of the people there were probably well-intentioned, useful idiots who thought the election was stolen.
I always say they're like fat old white guys with fanny packs that were standing there with American flags. Most of the people there were like that. They're like, America, and they got their big belly and they're standing there and they're like waving their flag with their Trump trucker hat, and they're like the most harmless people in the world. But that's not the people that did what the whole game was about, right? Go ahead. Keep going, brother.
Okay, so it's just like, you had a few agent provocateurs.
Yep.
Who are either blackmailed or working for the FBI or whatever, who said, let's storm the Capitol. Let's hang Nancy Pelosi. And so basically, this was a glorified tailgating party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course. Or those on the left, spin it, said, oh, no, this is like the storming of the Bastille. It's like, and if you say that it was a manipulated or manufactured event, people will accuse you of being a Trump supporter.
Right. Yeah, exactly. When I remember that, because I said the day that happened, I told my audience, because I did a broadcast live, the day that happened, the first thing I said was, the FBI is all over this. They're all over this. The FBI you're going to find out that the FBI did all this.
Well, and you remember a couple of months before that, and it was in October of 2020, you had a similar incident take place in not Minnesota, Michigan, with the
Mm-hmm.
alleged kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer. Basically, they essentially use the same scripts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They always do. They have like the same script that they use for every single plot that they plan and game that they do. It's like, and then you always have like the lone shooter, right? It's always a lone shooter. It's always that. They always try to make it out to be that.
And of course, this was, I believe, the second week of October. I don't recall the date of the alleged kidnapping plot, but the week before, the Supreme Court and the Michigan State Supreme Court in Lansing made a decision on a case because somebody had sued the governor, Gretchen Whitmer, saying that she had exceeded her emergency powers. Now,
Right.
according to Michigan law, she can declare a state of emergency for 60 days, 60. And this was 3 or 4 months beyond that. And her response was, well, your honors, your opinion is duly noted. Have a nice day.
Right. I'm going to do what I want to do. Right.
Yes. And so then a week or so later, you have this ridiculous kidnapping plot.
Which anybody thought that the governor was actually in danger of being kidnapped by a bunch of people, a bunch of dudes that were just running around with like nothing. Just
Yes.
nonsense.
Well, so the most ridiculous story will become the most believable one. And of course, I don't mean to bring up 9/11, but one of the questions I like to ask people is, oh, okay, how do you account for building 7? What do you mean building 7?
I always ask that question. Did building 7 fall through osmosis, or how exactly did that happen? Like you're just standing there and all of a sudden building 7 fall. That's the one thing that's almost the only thing I say to them when people bring up 9/11. I say building 7. That is a greater miracle than finding Muslims IDs fully visible on the ground down there when everything else is burnt alive, right? And the black boxes, they can't find any black boxes, but they find 2 Arab guys' IDs on the ground.
Well, and of course, you're talking about ridiculous things I have discovered over the years, in history. But how is it Fidel Castro was in power for over half a century, from 1959 till he died, 10 years ago or whatever it was? And I mean, if the United States wanted to, we could have popped him like a pimple.
Right.
And how is the United States was able to maintain a Marine base in Guantanamo for all that entire time?
Yeah,
Well,
because something had to orchestrate that.
well, and I realized the fact that Fidel Castro went to 3 Jesuitical schools had absolutely nothing to do with it. The fact that Reinhard Gehlen, who founded the Mossad and was a Nazi colonel, the fact that he recommended to Allen Dulles, who was there's John Foster Dulles and then there's Allen Dulles. One was in charge of the CIA, and one was in charge of the National Security Advisor. Well, okay,
Yep.
so Galen recommended to one of them, hey, I understand that Fidel Castro went to 3 Jesuit schools. Why don't you install him as leader of Cuba? And Galen said this in his autobiography. And so the Dulles brothers said, okay, we'll do that.
Exactly. And by the way, and what we have proof of is that every major dictator has been trained by Jesuits at either Jesuit universities or Jesuit influenced universities.
Like Charles Taylor, the leader of the thug who's in charge of Liberia back in the 1980s. Paul Pot, who was the dictator who led the Khmer Rouge in the 1970s. Idi Amin, who was the thug in charge of Uganda. And
Well, yeah, because one of the things that Yeah, you have fascism and you have communism, and both of them are Jesuit maxims. Both of them were invented by them and perfected by them. So they either have an open policy of fascism, or they have a open policy of communism with a closed policy of fascism that they use through their dictators, and they play both sides of the game every single time. It seems like.
Well, it's just like I mean, you have the Federal Society for the for judges, which is supposed to be conservative, right wing, uh, um, reactionary. And then you also have the Constitutional Society, which is supposed to be liberal, progressive, left wing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, so you have Leo Leonard, who founded the Federalist Society, who's a Knight of Malta as a devout Roman Catholic. Then you have Peter Rubin, who founded the Constitutional Society, and he got a law degree from Georgetown University. So that's the playing out of the old Hegelian dialectic, as you just said.
Yes.
So the conservative here in the U.S. they run the Democrats and the Republicans. In the U.K. they run Labour and the Conservatives.
Yeah, and in Toronto, Canada, they run it all. I mean, my friends in Toronto, Canada, Pastor Jeffrey, I preached over there. This Bill C9 and everything that's going on right now over in Toronto is just absolutely, it's just unbelievably Marxist what they're doing. And my theory is that they are pushing them to become the 51st state of America, because I believe that when I've studied this technocracy and the 10 toes and the technocracy that's out there and the 10 regions, I believe they're forming all these into regions. And you have Trump that's trying to get Mexico, Canada, America, Cuba, right? Venezuela
and Greenland.
And Greenland. And if you study that, there's a technocratic map that was put together years ago by Elon Musk's grandpa and a few of those other boys, and all of them agreed that was number one. That they want the world split up into 10. The Bible talks about those 10 toes, right? It talks about those 10 kingdoms. It talks about those things. And that's what this technocracy wants. And Elon Musk is doing his best to push that and promote that. And Donald Trump, you explained to me why Donald Trump would say, we're going to invade Cuba. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And Greenland, all of that is a part of that technocrat map. All of it is.
Well, I'm a little bit older than you are. So the two board games that were popular in the 80s were Risk and Dungeons and Dragons.
My son loves Risk, by the way. That's like one of his favorite games.
Oh, and I'm sorry, are you going to get him counseling for that?
Yeah, he needs it.
So yes, I wasn't in Dungeons and Dragons, and so well, anyhow, but it seems that Donald Trump is learning his foreign policy from Risk. It's
yes,
like, well, and of course, I used to like to try cash Greenland, but it's very hard to keep for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure is. And you know what? When you see it now, it's very hard because they're playing so many games, and you're going to find out in the future here that it's going to get awful crazy real quick before Trump leaves office. And I've got some predictions about that, but we'll save that for another broadcast. Let's move it closer now. Let's talk about Minnesota. I want you said some interesting things to me about Minnesota being led by the Jesuits, infused and influenced by the Jesuit order and by the connections to Roman Catholicism. Let's talk about these connections, and you tell me some of the things that you've discovered and you've seen through studying and research through the Twin Cities and how they're affected by the Jesuit order.
Okay, well, just like, all right, one of the techniques that Jesuits have used for centuries is education.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll set up a school, and that'll be their base of operations. So in D.C. you have Georgetown, in New York City you have Fordham. Well, they don't quite have the same situation in Minneapolis, St. Paul, but they have St. Thomas University, and they also have St. Mary's University, which are Catholic. So that's close enough. So, and it's a similar situation. in Dallas Fort Worth, they have University of Dallas, which is Catholic, and so they'll do it. So that's how they do things. Your current governor, Tim Walz, I guess he's in his early 60s now. He got his master's degree from Thomas University or St. Mary's University.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Walz grew up Catholic, but I guess about back in the 90s when he got married to his wife, he switched over to the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America.
That's probably worse than Catholic, to be honest with you.
Well, okay, I don't want this to turn into a comedy routine, but I've heard people say the ELCA stands for Evil Lutheran Church of America, among other things.
Yes,
Like,
I would agree with that. That is the most liberal and wicked Lutheran church that flies under the banner. There's nothing. Martin Luther would burn it down if he was alive. They wouldn't even accept anything Martin Luther said in the first place. They don't accept anything that Martin Luther believed in the first place. It is that bad. But yeah, the ELCA, it is the most liberal LGBTQ church. And by the way, that is what has led to Minnesota being so cold spiritually and so dead. You know, all these people think they're Christians and they don't know the first thing in these ELCA. They don't know the first thing about being a Christian. They don't even know the gospel.
well, do you mind if I just share one? Okay, with Eric, he has a policy. I can only share one Shaggy Dog story per stream.
You can do whatever you want. I don't care. Go ahead.
Okay, so my brother Dan, and he and his wife, they're a member of a local ELCA church.
Yep.
Now, Doris grew up Catholic, and I guess she switched over to the ELCA, or what would become the ELCA in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess back in 2001, the ELCA was having its annual convention to discuss whatever topic.
Mm-hmm.
And this year is this year 2001, it was in Indianapolis, and so they're talking about the whole LGBT, PDQ, PBJ, what are they calling it these days? Movement.
Exactly.
I mean, should they allow them to become members of the church? Should they ordain them as ministers? Should they have same-sex blessings? Which was the language they're using back then, because the whole idea of homosexual marriage wasn't really a thing yet.
Right.
And so Doris, emailed me this, and she said, well, they couldn't come up with a decision, and they'll come back in 3 years in 2004 to make their decision. Did you catch that?
Yeah, they come back in 2004 to make their decision. Like, they didn't open up the Bible and see what God's word said about homosexuality and about marriages between a man and a woman and how simple that is. And the thing, it always baffles me when churches think that it's like the Southern Baptist Convention right now, right? They want to vote. They're voting and we're going to put an amendment forward for outlawing women pastors. Hey, I hate to break it to you there, guys, but God already put that forward a long time ago, and churches aren't allowed to vote on things that God has already said is his law and his word. When God commands us something and illustrates something, we obey it and we follow it. We don't sit there and say, well, maybe we should vote on this. You don't have a vote. Christ is the head of the church and the savior of the body. When he commands something, you don't have a right to vote on that.
So are you saying it's like debating, well, does 2 + 2 actually equal 4? Well,
exactly.
Let's appoint a committee, then a subcommittee who'll file reports and come back in 6 months to make an initial recommendation. Then we'll table it and say, revisit this, say 6 months later after that, then 2 years after that. Then finally, in about 20 years, we might come up with a tentative solution.
Right. Decision. And see, what happens with that, brother, is that it gives that sin time to grow in the churches. It gives the experience of, well, we haven't taken a definitive stand against the LGBTQ movement. We haven't taken a definitive stand against homosexuality. We haven't taken a definitive stand against women in the ministry. We haven't taken a definitive stand against marriage between one man and one woman. We haven't done that. So now what happens is that it leaves it open for people to debate it among themselves instead of taking the word of God as our final authority of faith and practice and saying, no, God's word already said it. It's final. God said it was final. We don't have a right to vote on that.
Well, if I could just share a couple of factoids with the ELC about the ELCA,
Absolutely.
the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. It came into being in 1988 with a bunch of other smaller synods were dying. They said, hey, you know what? We need to combine and become the ELCA. So that happened in 1988. Well, in the year 2000, they had roughly 5 million members, 5.2. So as of 2025, the number was maybe 3 million. And that number is probably they're probably it's probably more like 2 million. And the current head, I guess the president of the ELCA, his name is Yehul Curry. Yes, that's his name. Yes, Yehiel, Yehul Curry.
Julio.
Yes, he's black. That doesn't mean anything. It's just like, but you generally speaking, don't think of people of African descent being Lutherans. You usually think of them being named Peterson, Larson, Olson, something like that.
A good Minnesota Lutheran name.
Yes. Well, he's from Chicago, and he actually grew up Roman Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Oh, I wonder. So the head of the ELCA grew up Roman Catholic.
Correct.
Takes over the organization.
Yes.
Takes over the entire organization. He's in control of it now. And, you wonder why it's a mess the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what these new Catholics are doing with that, brother? They're running online. These Roman Catholics are running online right now. And these influencers, these Roman Catholic influencers, and they're showing all the tranny Protestants and all the perverts and all the tranny pastors out there and all the LGBTQ stuff to make Protestantism look bad, to draw people into what they say is traditional Roman Catholicism. But what they're not showing is behind the scenes all the stuff that Rome is involved with, that Rome is the one that's perverted and perverted all these Protestant churches, infiltrated them, perverted them through their Jesuit order and through their colleges. And they are destroying them. Meanwhile, building up and trying to give the illusion that they're this traditional Bible-based church.
Well, and it's not just happening in the ELCA. It's happening in all of mainstream Protestantism. It's happening in the Anglican Church, the Episcopal Church, which is the American version, the Methodist, particularly United Methodist, Presbyterian Church USA. And I wish I had time to go over all this. But you said you wanted me to put my primary focus on Minnesota and the Twin Cities.
Yep. So we have the governor that was ELCA. So we already know what bent he has on everything. And he was trained Roman Catholic, right? But in order to be elected, he wanted to be a Protestant. So they trained him. By the way, it's funny. He said he was in China and Tiananmen Square and all this other stuff, and he made all this stuff up and proved to be a liar. But anyway, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, yes, of course. People will say, "Well, yes, he has been in China. He just wasn't He wasn't there at the right time. So his heart was in the right place."
Yeah, it's hard. I think his wallet was in the right place, is what I think.
So, and of course, you've had all these events that have taken place in Minnesota during the 2020. So back in 2020, May the 25th, you had the whole George Floyd episode.
Oh my. I would care to comment on George Floyd. George Floyd was a very wicked man, and he's made out to be a hero in the Twin Cities. They've got streets, and you can't even hardly, we've preached downtown in those areas, and when you go down to that area, George Floyd Square, whatever they want to call it, it is the most, I mean, it is the most lawless place you've ever been in your life. I mean, they are absolutely lawless. Nobody is held accountable for what they do. We preached down in those areas at that time when they did their riots, and Tim Walz literally let them burn the police station down. I have a picture of a PowerPoint that I did, and it was an actual picture, though, that I took of that. And it looks like Gotham City. These guys are standing out with their arms up like this, and the whole police station is burnt to the ground almost. And they got masks on, and they literally look like something that Batman would be fighting in Gotham City. That's exactly what it looked like. George Floyd was the most terrible psyop ever pulled on the Twin Cities, and they got away with it.
Well, until more recently.
Yeah,
Then,
that's true.
Earlier in January, you had a couple of other made-for-TV movies. You had the Renee Good alleged killing on January the 7th. And we're
Yes.
assuming she's a real person and she really died. Then, was it 17 days later on the 24th, you had, was it Andrew Pretty?
Yep. I think that was his name.
It was a nurse, 37. Okay, so for starters, the woman, Renee Nicole Macklin Good,
Yep.
she's 37, and apparently she was killed by an ICE agent, Jonathan Ross. And okay, and she had 3 children, they
Okay.
say. Now, I believe she was with a woman, she was living with a woman, but she
Yes, she's a
had,
lesbian.
okay, she had been married to a man, and they had 3 children. Their ages were 15, 12, and 6, which adds up to 33. I realize that number is coincidental. And the ICE agent who shot her, Jonathan Ross, he was involved with an episode in June of the previous year where he almost got ran over, and he required 33 stitches.
33. You don't say.
Oh, move along. Nothing to see here.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. The number sequences, it's always amazing to me when you see that that a lot of these occultic ceremonies type things that go on, like George Floyd, that was all an occultic Masonic, the whole ritual, the whole thing was a ritual. I mean, they're rituals, and they always seem to include these numbers, that we find. And it's like in the news, you start reading, it's like, 33 stitches and $33 million and 33 days and 33, it's like 33 minutes. And it's like, why do they keep using the same numbers over and over and over again?
Well, because the Jesuits are occultists and they have a way of, they have a way of coding the stories.
Yes, they do.
And
to show you that's what they're doing.
Okay, so it's just like, now I'm not into numerology, but I understand there's significance to numbers. Now, I think we mentioned this before. 6 is the number of man.
Yes.
7 is the number of completeness.
Yep.
8 is new beginnings.
Yes.
11 means unity. 11 is the master number.
Yep.
13 is unity among Masons.
Yep. Rebellion.
And of course, 33, and there are other numbers that they like to use. Mm-hmm. And it's, so they have, sometimes they're acknowledging history, like a feast day of one of their alleged saints, or a battle, the day they won a battle, or something like that. So, but for the uninitiated, most people are clueless.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not talking, so that's why they have these numbers. That's why they have these locations.
Indeed.
Okay, so you can talk about specifically Minneapolis. The mayor, Jacob Fry, is Jewish, but he got his law degree from Villanova, which is Catholic. I believe in truth in advertising. Well, did you know there's a Charles Widger library at Villanova?
I did not know that.
Well, most people don't. Well, I'm sure I'm related to Chuck somehow, but I've never met him before.
And you haven't reaped any of the benefits of it, I suppose.
Unfortunately, no. And
So,
so,
okay. So you have this Jewish who they always tell us about that. What's the similarity, or what is a pattern that is showed between the Jews and the Jesuits? What have you found?
well, they're good frontmen. They're good plausible deniability. Because if you have somebody like a Jacob Fry in charge, you say, "Oh, see, it's the Jews who run everything."
Mm-hmm.
And of
And
course,
who's behind the scenes pulling the strings?
hmm, well, somebody with a collar on.
Yeah, I would say so. And okay, so you have Jacob Fry, and he was trained, you said, at Villanova. Where is that at? Is that in Minnesota?
Well, it's in Philadelphia.
Say that again.
It's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay, it's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And that's a Jesuit-led school. He's trained, and then this man finds himself in the governor or in the mayoral race in Minneapolis, and he finds himself smack dab in the middle of a Marxist takeover of the Twin Cities.
Yes. Now, it's a similar situation with the governor of Pennsylvania. His name is Josh Shapiro, and he got his law degree from Georgetown University.
Hmm. He's big time then.
Yes, he is.
And I understand that they want to train him to be president too as well. They've talked about presidential aspirations for him, and he'd be the perfect frontman for that, right? The Jewish man backed with a Jesuit education, and then trained at Georgetown University, you said, which is where all of them are trained pretty much.
Well, if okay, this is just my opinion. So this is not gospel truth. If Josh Shapiro has any other higher aspirations, I think with the next administration, which will probably be Democrats, he'll be attorney general or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him running for the presidency.
Okay. Yep, that's probably too far up the line without having federal recognition of anything, like being so people actually know who he is.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're governor, people usually know your name,
Mm-hmm.
or if you're an ex-actor from Austria.
That's true. Like Arnold.
Well, I'm not naming names.
Right. We don't want to do that. But like your buddy Arnold Schwarzenegger there, who was the governor of California. How did he get in there, you think? And what connections, have you ever heard of any connections that he has to the Jesuit order?
Well, he was married to Maria Shriver, who was a Kennedy, and he grew up Roman Catholic.
Did he now?
Yes, and his father was a Nazi. And no, that's not just a joke. He was actually a member of the National Socialist Party.
Really?
Yes.
So Schwarzenegger's his father was a Nazi,
Mm-hmm.
and he becomes the governor of California.
Correct.
And California is like Minnesota in a way that they're neither one of them are doing very well.
Well, they're being destroyed.
Yeah. Minnesota has been destroyed from the inside out. So you have this governor, or you have this mayor that's the mayor of Minneapolis, who basically, I don't know if you know this or not, but I've preached in Minneapolis on the streets very often. And there's basically a rule that the police at this upcoming Pride event, which we may not be going to, we may not be preaching outside of that one, we may be preaching at a different one, but at this upcoming event, the police are not going to be at the Pride event. Their presence is not going to be around there. And the reason why, they said, is because the LGBTQ people feel very uncomfortable around them. So if the LGBTQ people want to attack us, right? If they want to do that, then they're going to be able to do that, and the police are not going to do anything to stop them. The police in Minneapolis have literally not done their duty many times. I had a police officer look at me in Minneapolis, and he looked at me and he said, when I was standing there preaching, he said, "Do you think I care what happens to you?" That's what he said to me. I said, "No, not really." Because if you'd be willing to stick your knee on somebody's neck and kill them, you'd probably do the same to me. He didn't say much. But no, I don't think so.
So I'm sorry, were you making reference to George Floyd?
Yes.
Okay, so did that even actually happen?
Yeah, if it did, yeah.
I mean, and of course, all right. So we talked about the mayor of Minneapolis, but who's the chief of police? Brian O'Hara.
And he just got deposed, didn't he? He's not even the chief any longer.
Oh, he's not. Oh, okay. So as
Nope.
my information is a little bit out of date, but he
Yep.
grew up Irish Roman Catholic.
Right. Which, what did he do? What did this Irish Roman Catholic man who's in charge of Minneapolis, in charge of the police, and what does he do through the recent ICE, the recent ICE surge when they were pulling the illegals off the street and taking them, and then the Marxist citizens of Minneapolis, which they are there, by the way. Let me tell you something right now. That's not just a conspiracy, because I've preached down there and those people have tried to attack us. We were outside. Let me tell you, I'll give you an example. We were outside of a No Kings event, right? And I'm preaching outside of this No Kings event. Well, the year before, only a few people showed up to that, like a couple hundred people showed up. When Donald Trump got into office, oh my goodness, thousands did. And then they started surrounding us. The Marxists did. They started marching towards us. And if it wasn't for a line of state troopers that lined up to get us out of there and marched and got us, I asked them to give me an escort out of there. They escorted us out of there because they were going to kill us. There was 100,000 people approaching us. They started across the street and they kept pressing. So much so that this female state trooper, she said to me, she goes, "Look, I don't think I could protect you." I said, "Listen, lady, it's your job to protect me. Like, you guys are supposed to be doing your job." She goes, "No, you don't understand. I'll stay with you to the end, but I don't think I can protect you. I don't have enough men here to protect you. They're going to maul us all." And they literally, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I've preached here for 45 minutes. I preached the gospel. I stood on the street and warned these sinners. You just give me an escort out of here and I'll leave." And then she talked to another man and he goes, "We'll get you out of here." And they marched us straight out. All those people were like foaming at the mouth wanting to kill us. And they were so angry because we had an escort out of there that they couldn't touch us. But they wanted to. So back to O'Hara, that back to the Roman Catholic. He definitely was in on that conspiracy to start violence, start federal agents and local people fighting each other, and kept the agitation going. But go ahead with him, who this man is and kind of what he did.
Well, I don't know much about him other than the fact that his, ethnic and religious background, but he was there back in 2020. And it seems as if that in most of your major urban centers in the US, and in probably other countries as well, is they hire the least competent people possible to become the chief of police or to become sheriff or whatever, commissioner. And they have a track record of not doing their jobs. Hey, we're going to install you. I know I brought this up before, and this is not unique just to the Twin Cities. Do you know who the chief of police is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania right now?
I do not.
Okay, most people don't know this. Her name is Danielle Outlaw. Yes, that's her name.
Come on.
No, my imagination is not that good. Okay, so previously she had been the chief police officer of Portland, Oregon, and prior to that, she had been with the Oakland, California Police Department. No, she wasn't chief, but she was like a senior officer. So she got her undergrad degree from University of San Francisco, which is Jesuits. And prior to that, she went to Holy Names High School in Oakland, which is Catholic. And she's a Black woman. So when they brought in Danielle into Philadelphia back in February of 2020, she gave a press conference. And she said, "Boy, I can't believe in 2020 we're having this conversation. I'm the first female chief of police in Philadelphia, and I'm the first non-white chief of police in Philadelphia." Well, and that surprises me. Here we are in 2020 when she's giving the press conference, and so I want to make some new changes for our policies, such as female police officers will now be allowed to wear red fingernail polish when they're on duty.
Oh,
Because,
great.
as you know, that's critical in crime fighting.
Yes. Yeah, here's the thing. The Bible says children are their oppressors and women rule over them. And that's a shame. It's a shame, God says, for that to happen. And what we have in our country today is if you have I make no bones about it. I don't believe in female cops. I don't believe in female politicians. I don't believe in any of that because I don't believe the Bible. I don't believe the Bible condones any of that. In fact, it's the Bible preaches keepers at home that the word of God be not blasphemed. And that's what I preach and that's what I teach. And that's what I believe the scriptures say. When you see women in authority like that, we're mocked and laughed when people see that. We're laughed at because it's made such an effeminate society. You can't have a woman be the chief of police of a police department because there has to always be a mean old man at the top that makes decisions and says that's the way it's going to be. And that's not a woman.
Okay, and there's something, a certain detail I forgot. But 2020 was the worst year in recent history for Philadelphia, going back decades by every metric: murder, rape, robbery, home invasion, aggravated assault. They had something like over 400 murders that year. And that was, now you can't put the entire blame on her,
right?
But okay, it's the cliche. Was it causation or was it correlation? Doesn't mean causation, but after all, but she did do one thing right. After all, female police officers can now wear red fingernail polish.
Yeah, and I live in, or I pastor in Northfield, Minnesota, right? And I'm out there and I'm always preaching out there, and I get in trouble with these connections, Minnesota here and everything that goes on there. And I'm over there in Minnesota or in Northfield and I'm preaching, and here you have these female cops that are coming up to you and talking to you. And, they came up to me and tried to violate my rights the other day, and they found out that they were wrong and they folded eventually. But it's like you have these little female cops. I'm like, what in the world are they going to do really to anybody? I mean, you don't have to worry about me because I'm not violent. I'm going to obey the laws as long as they don't compromise the Bible and all that. And I'm going to do what's right. I'm not going to, but what about these big, mean guys? And you have this little blonde girl that's walking up to you. She's like 5'2", and she's a cop. And you're like, what's this skinny little girl going to do? I mean, what exactly is she like? If you had some Somalis or Muslims or terrorists or rape gangs that were coming by, what's this woman going to do? Half the time now what we have in our country is we have women cops that are shooting, or male cops that are shooting people that are committing crimes. And sometimes they're shooting them because they physically cannot handle the men that they're going up against, or a male cop sees a female cop not being or being in trouble, and then they go to a gun instead of, because they can't physically do the things that are supposed to be done.
Well, I know we're going a bit off field, but I understand the London Metropolitan Police Department used to have a policy that in order for them to hire you, you had to be at least 6 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And that ruled out most of the population. This goes back 100 years. I know in order to be, they used to have a policy for male officers for the California Highway Patrol is you had to be at least 5'10".
Right.
Now, when they started allowing women to be CHP or in London, they had to throw those policies out the window. And uh, during the 1970s, the San Francisco Police Department or Fire Department made the decision saying, you know what, we don't have any females who work for our fire department. So not only are we going to start hiring them, but by the year 1980, we want to have parity, 50% men and 50% females. And they said, well, how are we going to do that? Well, we'll just lower our standards. They don't have to be able to carry as much weight. They don't have to carry a hose up a ladder, anything like that. But despite all their efforts and despite all of their incentives, they're offering huge cash bonuses. They couldn't meet their goals.
You think?
So,
let's see. Ross Duncan has a comment here. He says, British cops, 2 women, 1 man got beat up by 2 Muslims in Manchester airport. The video showed the women being thrown around like rag dolls. Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't, okay. This is the first I've heard of that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Right. Now you think about that, brother, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, okay, because see the correlation here. Okay. So we have Jesuit ran Twin Cities, Marxist takeover. Then you have all the major metropolitan cities. You have London. You have all these places, London and other places like that, right? Where the same scenario is being played out everywhere, right? And we know that it's to destroy Western civilization, because you think they're doing that in China? You think those Chinese men are doing that? You think Russia's doing that? You think Putin's doing that? You think they're hiring these little skinny broads to go in there and defend them? You think that's happening at all in any of those places?
Not so much.
I don't think so, right? But why are they doing it in Western civilization? To totally humiliate these white men and to enrage them and make them angry, so they rise up and they push for that new right, that right fascist, which brings them right into the hands of the Jesuit order. Marxism is always used to push people to Jesuit-ran fascism. Always, always, always. Because real men get tired of it. Listen, you know what's going on in my state right now, which is like, I can't even fathom it. It's all women running everything. It's everywhere you go. All the politicians are women. Everything is women. Everything is like effeminate and fruity. And everything is women or transgenders or sods all over the place. Everything politically, it's women. All of our senators, everything, it's all women. It's infuriating to a real man. You're like, what are we doing here?
Well, and of course, this would be a glaring oversight. So do you know what people call your governor?
Yeah, Tampon Timmy.
And you know how that came about?
Yeah, because he put tampons in men's bathrooms. Because he said men straight.
Well,
yeah.
Well, if you think about it, shouldn't they call it women's straight? But anyhow,
they should. Yes.
Well, but we here in California.
That was awful witty of you, George.
Oh, okay. Well, you had to get up early in the afternoon to fool me. But
that's right.
Anyhow, but we actually beat him to the punch, because we started doing that in California like 2018, 2019. And at our libraries, and I said, so okay. When I noticed this, I thought it was a joke, like a practical joke. So I went to the front desk and talked to the librarian, and he said, "Oh, we have some men who identify as women and we want these product, or they're transitioning. And so, okay, if they're going to do that, do it at home. Why making it everybody else's business? And
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Why? What's the point? And it's to disrupt, because everything the Jesuits do and their Masonic underlings do, everything they do is to undermine God's order. Everything is about inverting God's order and changing it, because once you have that chaos and you literally have that, you have women running everything, you demoralize. I'm telling you, I pastor here in this, and I preach hard about the role of the sexes and everything else. And I'll tell you what, when I walk around Minnesota, I see the most effeminate men. It's like they have literally been made eunuchs. They literally have no testosterone. They have no boldness. They're not the ones that get mad at us when we preach. Most of it's women that get mad at us. And all that is because of this effeminate-led society. And you trace it back. I remember, listen, we're talking about Jesuit-trained Jacob Fry, right? I remember during COVID, and I remember during the BLM riots, he walked in to a BLM congregation that was all, they were out there and they were all lined up in the streets. You know, they could be lined up in the streets and they could be doing all that, but we couldn't have church, right? But so they're all lined up in the streets over there, the BLM dudes, they're all out there, and Jacob, or the chick, the BLM lesbian, like Jesse Lee Peterson calls them, fat black lesbians, that she was out there and she was just going off on everybody. And Jacob Fry walks out there and she embarrasses him. And she causes him to walk away with his tail between his legs. And he looked like an effeminate little man because she chased him out by saying, "Get the blank out of here." And she just starts yelling at him. And he walks away like a little man. I'll tell you what I would have done. If that woman did that to me and I was the mayor, I would have had the National Guard right there and says, "No, if somebody's going to leave, it's you. You're leaving because you ain't commandeering these streets and taking them over. You're going to leave, big mouth black woman." I know this is the first time anybody's ever said something. You big mouth black woman. You're not used to it because you're a big mouth black woman. That's all you do is run your mouth. Well, you know what? Now somebody's going to run their mouth and you're going to listen. That's what I would have done. But because he's working for his Jesuit masters, he becomes an effeminate man and he walks right out of there and he lets that black BLM witch tell him what to do on purpose to further demoralize and to anger white men and to make them mad, right? Real men that actually care about life, to make them angry about being subjugated like that and to further push it. So they basically silenced all of us during COVID. They tried to. And they're letting these Marxists burn down the city. So tell me, George, who's in charge of Minneapolis when the city's getting burned down? Who's in charge of the governorship when the city's being burnt, when the Twin Cities are being burned? Who's in charge of all those things?
well, and I know you're not. This is a rhetorical question, and you're not supposed to, answer it. And also, you're not supposed to answer a question with a question. But back in 2020, so who was in charge of Seattle, Portland, Oregon, Chicago, San Francisco, all your, Philadelphia, New York City, all your major urban centers throughout the U.S. And of course, one of the things people don't realize is with the psychological operation of COVID, you had that. Then you had the George Floyd protests.
Well, let me hold that thought for a second. So let's talk about COVID there, because that all factors in. Don't lose your train of thought with that. But who's in charge of the entire COVID operation? Who was in charge of that from the top?
Well, you could say, well,
doctor that was in charge. Let's talk about the doctor that was in charge.
Tony Fauci?
Yes.
Anthony Stephen Fauci.
Yeah.
Who went to Holy Cross for his undergrad degree, went to a Jesuit school was at Regis in New York City, and prior to that, he went to Guadalupe or Our Lady of Guadalupe School. So his first 17 years of education was Catholic slash Jesuit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's his spouse. And I say spouse because I think she's a woman.
Yeah,
Christine,
maybe.
Christine Grady. She, and using that in air quotes, got her undergrad and graduate degree, PhD from Georgetown and her master's from Boston College. So between them, they have like roughly 30 years of Catholic slash Jesuit education. So for all intents and purposes, he's a priest, she's a nun.
Right,
Although,
and he is quoted as saying that everything that he learned from the Jesuits.
mhm, yes,
That's what he said. He said everything I learned from the Jesuits. And he's an Italian Roman Catholic, correct?
well, Sicilian.
Sicilian.
Well, there is a distinction there. Northern Italians don't consider Southern Italians to be real Italians, especially Sicilians, but that's a whole other conversation altogether.
Yes.
Uh, so then you had, of course, he was the face, the American face of COVID, or the
Mm-hmm.
American medical face of COVID. But then you had Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, who's a known Freemason, who was trained by the Jesuits at the University of Freiburg, had at least one papal audience.
Mm.
Um, then there's like, we could probably spend several shows talking about COVID.
Yes.
Um,
We sure
and
could. But why
so,
do you think the timing does it surprise you that the timing of COVID, okay? That the timing of COVID with the riots that went on in Minneapolis with Derek Chauvin and the George Floyd riots and everything else, the timing of that with the restrictions of COVID. Remember, we were all locked into the cages and all this, and then you have the timing with that, and then you have Tampon Timmy's in charge of everything, right? He's the governor. You have Jacob Fry, who's the mayor. You have the police chief of Minneapolis, who is O'Hara. You have all of these intricate Jesuit-led, Jesuit-controlled people fulfilling and fulfilling their roles to make all of us extremely angry about what's going on.
mhm. Well, and of course, their response is, well, what are you trying to do? Kill grandma? Do you want to overrun the hospitals? What, are you anti-science? Why are you anti-science? Why do you hate science so much? You probably believe in creationism.
They did say that. You know what else? They had a sign up in Minnesota, and they said this on the billboard. They said, "Is grandma's pie worth dying for?" I'm like, yeah. Have you ever had grandma's pie? If you ate grandma's pie, you'd realize it's worth dying for. Anyway, that was free. It was good. It was good pie
Okay.
too. And I told them, just like they said, well, your church services. Let's go back to this. So the governor has his rule that you can't sing in church. You can only have a certain number of people there. You can only do this. And all this is coming from Fauci, right? All this is coming from the CIA led Fauci, whose labs, he has labs in Wuhan, China, who's working all over the world, right? To create sickness and to feed sickness into people and make them sicker. My mom almost died from whatever it was, the flu. It's just the flu to me, but I mean, right? And it was just a bad flu. It was just no different but it was engineered. I believe this sickness is engineered. It was.
Well, there's different opinions as to what COVID was. Was it even real? Was it 5G? Was it people reacting badly from? Oh, you're frozen. I can't hear me, brother. Hello. Hello.
Chris.
Well,
Okay. Let's see. George, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
I think it restarted for us.
Oh, okay.
I think it restarted for us because it cut off and it automatically restarted. I think it'll go again. Let's see.
Well, maybe the Jesuits didn't like what you're saying about their
Probably
voice.
not, because I'm like a spaz, so I just like let her wail, and that's what happened. You're probably like, man, I thought you brought me on to talk here, but I like talking, George. I like talking back and forth. So, I mean, that's why it doesn't take long to fill up 2 hours.
Well, well, it turns out I just got a text that there's some other business I need to attend to. So we can possibly go until the top of the hour. So I guess
Sure,
that
that's
would
fine,
be
brother.
about 4 p.m. Central. Okay, so and of course it had nothing to do with the policies they had implemented. Like people couldn't see their loved ones. It wasn't the remdesivir people had to take. It wasn't
Yeah.
midazolam over in the UK. It was so you know you heard these stories like people being killed in a motorcycle crash in Florida, and if they tested positive for COVID, their death was COVID, or people had a gunshot wound, it was COVID.
Yeah, those numbers were a little bit fishy, weren't they? Like everything was COVID, right?
Yes, so if you got hit by a bus and got knocked off the Golden Gate Bridge and were eaten by a shark, your death was COVID.
Right. That's how it is, right? I thought it was amazing, right? They tested everything like it's COVID. Wait a minute, that dude just fell off a dock and hit his head and died or something. Man, what do you mean it's COVID? That's how they were fudging the numbers, right? They were making the numbers up as they went, weren't they?
Just a little bit. So
Just a little bit. By the way, did you know that the reason they did that is because they got more money for that death if it was rated. If you put COVID on there, you got more money for the death. The government did.
So I just want you probably know this, but do you know who Kerry Mullis was?
I do not.
Kerry Banks Mullis. Well, his dates were the 28th of October, 1944, or December 1944, and he died on August the 7th, 2019. So he was 74 at the time of his death. Now, interestingly enough, August the 7th is the date the Jesuits came out of suppression in 1814. So
that wasn't an accident, was it?
Well, since I don't believe in conspiracy theories, yes, it was a coincidence. So, Mullis was the inventor of the PCR, the polymerase chain reaction. He won the Nobel Prize back in 1993. On at least two different occasions, he said he never developed it to diagnose any illness. He is a bit of a, don't want to say a scam artist, but he's an entrepreneur. So this was a DNA collection tool. So he wanted to see if a watch belonged to Elvis, he could just run the PCR on it, or if an earring belonged to Marilyn Monroe, he can do this assay on it. So, okay, this watch belonged to Elvis, so it should be worth all this money. Well, that was his whole impetus for developing the PCR. And he said on at least two occasions, he never designed it to diagnose any illness. If you run it enough cycles, you'll find whatever it is you're looking for. So the first medical application for it was HIV.
Oh boy. Who, by the way, Fauci was involved with too.
Yes, and cancer prior to that. So he was one of the advocates of AZ or AZT, which was so AZT was a repurposed cancer drug for HIV, and so he made a ton of money. So, Anthony Fauci was worked for the National Institutes of Health for over 50 years, from 1968 until 2022, so 54 years. And in 1984, interesting year, he became the head of the Institutes of Infectious Diseases, I believe, or what the position was. I'm just going from memory here.
Right.
And so Fauci was basically like the J. Edgar Hoover of the NHS.
Yeah,
And
he
of
was rewarded. He was rewarded for his work in the AIDS, his Jesuit work that he did there, to accomplish what he needed to there as a Jesuit coadjutor. He was rewarded and given COVID so he could rule the nation and further enrage men and make them angry. And by the way, I always like to let people know that all this took place under Donald J. Trump. This was not under Biden. This was under Trump. Trump is the one that allowed Fauci to do everything that he did, from the president's standpoint. But that's what people don't like to admit. I'm like, you all took Trump's the one that pushed the vaccine. Trump's the one that pushed all these things.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting that Anthony Fauci was there, started working for the federal government in 1968 until his retirement in 2022. So 54 years. And I guess one of the things we'll have to talk about is all the machinations the Jesuits started in 1968.
Okay.
All the things they got. Well, I mean, among other things, the Club of Rome was founded on April the 7th.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Um,
That's a major one. I believe the Club of Rome is the one that pushes also the technocratic map too as well.
yes, and of course, you have who is it? Paul Ehrlich wrote his book, The Population Bomb, that came out that year. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not.
Okay, so Paul Ehrlich was he was like a doom scroller before that was a thing.
Okay.
He said in 1968 the world's population was something like 4 billion people, and there are way too many people on Earth, and unless we do something right now, the world's going to end by the year 2000. So we definitely need to do everything we can to reduce the population. Definitely in the 1970s.
I think he might have missed the number. I think was off a little bit. Do you?
Well, perhaps. Well, of course, yes, he was Jewish, but he had at least 2 papal audiences in 2015 and 2017.
Do you remember, brother, in talking about COVID there? And you remember, so there's Anthony Fauci, who's the Jesuit that's literally in charge of the whole entire COVID operation. But then underneath him was a man that I think his name was Francis. I can't remember his name.
Collins?
But what's that?
Collins?
Yes. He was in charge of taking what Fauci was pushing. He was taking that to the Protestant churches and getting them on board with his scheme.
Okay, so Francis Collins, it was how should I put this? I don't mean to sound mean, but with Protestants like him, who needs papists? Because I know that he's had at least 1 papal audience. He has spoken at the Pontifical Academy of Sciences at least once.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that you want to hear a little factoid?
Yes.
Okay. well, once I get done, you have nobody to blame but yourself. You said yes. You gave me.
I did.
You gave me permission. Okay. So on October the 22nd, 1996, so almost 30 years ago, then Pope John Paul II issued it wasn't an encyclical, but it was like a notch below that to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, saying that evolution is more than just a hypothesis. It's worthy of you could be a Catholic in good conscience and subscribe to it.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
So I realize we weren't talking about evolution, we were talking about COVID, but that's
they're one and the same, but they're connected.
Okay. So anyhow, the Francis Collins, as I said, was a regular guest with the Pope Francis, as far as I know. I don't think he's got together with the current Bob. What's his name?
They talked about the influence that Francis Collins had, though, on Protestant churches. I did a broadcast or two on it. Carl would remember that, a guy that listens to us here. He would remember that more. But I know that I did broadcast and I talked about Francis Collins because he was literally the liaison to push the churches. Then you had the PPP loans that came out where they basically paid the churches to stay closed and paid all their finances. And then Trump gave like $3 billion to the Roman Catholic Church, which they in turn used to pay off their fines for illegal sex molestation of children. So, you know, that all happened around at the same time, and they never had to pay any of those loans back, of course. But that Francis Collins, he was the liaison to get these big Baptist and big box churches to go along with COVID.
Well, yeah, I did not know that, but he basically, you've had all sorts of people like Francis Collins. You know, you could say that, well, he was like the medical version of Billy Graham.
Yes, indeed. Who was trained, who I think he got a degree, an honorary degree from a Jesuit university, didn't he?
Well, it was, I think it was Dominican or something. It was,
Okay.
Catholic, but it was in North Carolina, Belmont. I mean, so yeah, close enough. And now, you have, as we've discussed off air, you have Rick Warren, who's basically taken over his spot.
Yep. Yep. Who's definitely, he's connected to the Council on Foreign Relations, I believe, in all those organizations too, as well, as long as maybe even some of the other ones too. I just can't remember all of them, but yeah, he is.
Okay. So Rick Warren, he, as you said, he's part of the CFR, the World Economic Forum. He's had at least one papal audience with Pope Francis. And I think I mentioned this to you off air, but back in April of 2014, there was a Catholic family marriage conference in Orange County, California. And he was the, I want to say, keynote speaker there, or like the guest speaker there. And just before this conference, he went on the Catholic program World Over Live, which is on the Catholic cable channel EWTN, which officially stands for World the Eternal Word Television Network, or as I like to say, the Evil Horror Television Network.
I agree. Amen. They promote more Roman Catholicism and all, and the great horror religion than just about anybody. All of these big name TV organizations, they've always been like that. It's like back in when you had Jack Van Impe back in the day. Jack Van Impe back in the day, he was strong on the King James Bible, strong on many things, and then he started to get in bed with the Pope of Rome, and he started talking about his Catholic brothers and sisters and the Holy Father and all this other stuff, and he compromised for money.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, more recently, I guess before Easter this year, I guess the Thursday or Wednesday before Easter this year, Donald Trump was in the White House with a bunch of religious figures. The very pious and holy Paula White, Franklin Graham, Robert Jeffers of First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas, and Catholic Bishop Robert Barron. And I guess they're praying for the president. I guess they put hands on him. So, all right. Well, all right. How can you possibly justify that? I mean, if I were a member of Mr. Jeffers' church in Dallas, I said, there's no way, I would have him as my pastor.
No, not at all.
I mean,
go ahead, brother.
I mean, among other things, he's being unequally yoked with non-believers.
Right.
With a pastor and a Catholic prelate, a bishop. Now, I'm sure Bob Barron is a very nice fellow, but he's an agent of the Catholic Church.
Yes. But you know what? I blame that. That goes back to pastors. The only reason that goes back to Obama calling himself a Christian. Okay. The reason why Obama could call himself a Christian is because people in America don't ever see real biblical Christianity. Their pastors don't stand up and preach against the Pope of Rome. They don't stand up and preach against ecumenicalism. They don't stand up and preach against false gospels and false doctrines and lying wolves in sheep's clothing and everything else. They don't do that anymore. So people's senses are not sharpened. Their senses are weak, and they're not strong people. They don't know the truth, and they're not able to discern between right and wrong, good and evil. And so anybody that falls, that's why Obama could say, oh, I'm a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. I'm a Christian. He don't know what a Christian is. And that's why Donald Trump could say he was a Christian. No, I take the wine, I take the cracker, and I don't ever repent. I don't worry about things like that. I don't do that. That's why.
I'm sorry. I was taking the wine and the cracker. I thought you were going to do a Groucho Marx impersonation.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No.
Oh, okay. I can just tell you, I could probably do several shows on the various horror stories I've encountered at church or places that call themselves churches.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
especially
like,
where you're at.
Well, yes. And it's just like, all right, well, I hope we can do this again. I mean, that's up to you.
We will. Amen. We will. Lord willing, we will.
Oh, okay. Well, and because there's other materials, there's other items I would like to address and cover. I didn't get to everything regarding the Twin Cities. We talked about Minneapolis, but not so much about St. Paul. So perhaps we can.
And you can pick that up now if you want to and talk about it. We've got a few minutes. It's 3:45. We still got a few minutes left here. We got about 10, 15 minutes if you've got that much time. And you feel free to mention it.
Okay, so you have so we talked about Minneapolis, but not so much about St. Paul. The police chief in St. Paul is named Axel Henry, and he got his master's degree, or no, he got his degree from St. Thomas University in Minneapolis. So that's the fellow who's in charge of the PD in St. Paul. Also, you have the mayor of St. Paul. Her name is Cowie Her. Yes, that's her name, Her. She, I believe, is of Laotian descent, and she was actually born in Laos.
Yeah, did you know that she's an illegal immigrant?
Oh, she's not here legally?
No, she's not here legally. She admitted it. She said that she did not come here legally. Okay, so her uncle, or her dad worked for the CIA, and her uncle worked for the USAID. So that's how she ended up here ended up in your neck of the woods. Wait, are you saying that are you trying to tell me, George, that her uncle was CIA and that she was brought here and she becomes the mayor of St. Paul?
Correct. And she got her master's from St. Thomas University. So she is a Catholic herself.
So she's a Catholic. So she's connected to the CIA through her uncle. And she's the mayor of St. Paul.
Correct.
And was trained by Jesuits at a university, at Catholic University.
Correct.
And those are all really great coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, George, could you tell me, do you know who started the CIA?
Well, are you talking about, or what would become the CIA? Are you talking about the office?
What would become the CIA?
William Donovan.
And what was he?
Irish Roman Catholic, a high-level Freemason, and a Knight of St. Gregory, among other things.
Really? And do you think that's like a really like another one of those coinkydinks that is just something kind of that they had in common? Or
well, if you look at who founded these various organizations, it was called wasn't called the FBI, but what would become the FBI, the Office of Investigative Services, was founded by Charles Joseph Bonaparte, who was a grand nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Could you wait? So hold on one second. Could you please repeat exactly what you just said again for me?
Charles Joseph Bonaparte was the grandnephew of Napoleon Bonaparte. The French dictator of what 200 years ago. The Napoleonic Wars.
And he started what in America?
What would become the FBI? It was called the Investigative Services.
Really? And by the way, while we're at it, we should we know that Napoleon Bonaparte was actually very intricately involved with the Jesuits.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Charlie Bonaparte was a high-level Freemason and a Knight of Malta. And he said in his biography, he said that, quote, Protestants, close quote, were heretics. So, or non-Catholics were heretics. And he said this like 100 years ago.
And he was in charge of the founding of what would be later called the FBI.
Correct.
And do you know who put him in charge of that? Do you remember the president?
I guess Franklin Roosevelt, or not Franklin, Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy. Good old Teddy. Right? So here's this Roman Catholic that is the grandnephew, you said?
Yes, of Napoleon. Yes, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Wow. It's just these things are very, very coincidental. I mean, that's a coincidental theory instead of a conspiracy theory, right? Those are just amazing facts that seem to escape the mind of most people that do any research that would look at that and say, so the CIA was founded, Catholics in Action is what Eric John Phelps calls them, right? The Catholics in Action there, they were founded initially, by Wild Bill Donovan, correct?
Correct.
Staunch Roman Catholic, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I forget, did he have any other credentials besides being a staunch Roman Catholic? Was he a Knight of Malta, did you say, or?
Knight of Singer, he was a Wall Street lawyer. He worked for DuPont.
Okay.
He spent some time in Nazi Germany in the 1930s before the war. Although it's really hard to get details as to what he was doing in Germany in the 1930s.
Sounds like he was being trained. That's what it sounds like he was doing.
Or he could have been doing some sightseeing.
He could have been. That was a great place to see things back then, so I can understand that.
Okay. And then you can talk about almost endless examples of this. What would become the CDC, the Centers for Disease Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia, was founded by Joseph Mountain, who got his undergrad and medical degrees from Marquette, which is or Marquet, which is Jesuit. So the founder of what would become the CDC, Joe Mountain, was trained twice by the Jesuits.
Interesting. So every level of control, what you find and what's never talked about in the news, because all you hear about in the news from these Catholic influencers are the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. That's what all of them say about everything.
Like Nick Fuentes?
Yeah, like Nick Fuentes, who is the number one Jew hater out there, and papal stooge. Definitely, I don't know where this kid came from. I don't know a lot about. I mean, all I know is he's Roman Catholic, but I don't know a ton about. All I know is that he walked away from certain. He walked away from January 6th. He walked away from all these other things unscathed, and I mean, I can't even get a video of truth out to 500 people, but that guy can get it out to 5 million people, and nobody censors him that much.
Well, I mean, if you're Roman Catholic, if you're a Freemason, you're good to go. I mean, you're covered. And you have Candace Owens.
Oh yeah,
who's basically and by the way, we're assuming she's a woman there again, but who is And of course, she's like the black female version of Nick Fuentes. It's the Jews.
Indeed.
And
And who came out as a staunch Roman Catholic, right?
yes, and for what it's worth, she grew up Baptist, and that means pretty much nothing. But Laura Ingraham grew up Baptist, a Southern Baptist.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. And now they're all Roman Catholics. Half all of them are coming out Roman Catholic. You have Candace Owens, who comes out staunch Roman Catholic. She just gets back from Russia. She spent 2 weeks in Russia on vacation or something like that, a week in Russia on vacation. Then you have Nick Fuentes, who literally spends a week in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
All of these people and their connections, and what are they pushing? Jewish hate. That's what's being pushed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose I can go on for hours doing this, but as I said, our time is almost up. But
It is.
do you know who Dan Goldman is?
I've heard the name, but I can't place.
Okay, he's a congressman from New York City. Think of every negative stereotypes about Jews. He's anti-Second Amendment, pro-homo, pro-abortion, all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not a big fan of Donald Trump, and perhaps with good reason. But most people have never heard of his brother William or Bill. Bill was a history professor at University of San Francisco.
Mm.
Now I know virtually nothing about Bill other than where he used to teach, but he was killed in a plane crash back in 2017 in Sonoma, California, which is like maybe 20 miles or so from where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these Jews, but they say behind every prominent Jew is a Jesuit hiding behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So you have Dan Goldman. We've discussed off the air last year. Ben Shapiro had an audience with the Pope.
Yep.
J.B. Pritzker, the current governor of Illinois, also had an audience with the Pope in December.
Yep.
You have Dave Rubin, who is a homosexual. He lives with his partner, and I think they've adopted a couple of children or something.
Wow, I didn't know that guy was a homosexual. I had no idea.
Okay, and I'm not sure if it's adoption or in vitro or whatever it is. So I guess in the last month or so, he was on a podcast with the aforementioned Catholic Bishop Robert Barron.
Mm.
A very pleasant. So you always, okay, so if there's a prominent Jew, there's usually a reason. There's usually a Jesuit hiding in his woodpile.
Yep. Getting ready so they foment the Jewish hate. They can put them out in front. It's kind of like, it's kind of like, when a doe is in heat and a buck is like in a den with her and he hears somebody coming, he kicks the doe out so she can get shot and he can skate away. And that's exactly what the Jesuits do. They kick the Jew out so they can get shot and they can skate away. That's how it always happens. That's exactly what they do.
So I guess deers don't have much sense of chivalry.
Not at all. Especially when it's of that time. They just kick them right out and let the doe get shot. They're fine with it. And that's how the Jesuits are. They want to foment the Jewish hate because they have no king. The Jews have no king but Caesar, is what they said. And because of the sin of the Jews and because of what's went on, the Jesuits use them to make money. They use them as their bankers. They use them to make cash, and they use them to blame, to be the scapegoat for everything. Yes, there are evil Jews. Yes, they are Masonic. Yes, they are working for the Pope, just like the government of Israel is. And yes, they're wicked. But they do that on purpose so they can evade justice, and they always do. They almost always do.
Okay, I'll have to clean this up somewhat, but I kind
Okay.
of clip of Nick Fuentes saying something like, well, hoes keep hoeing, ends keep inning, and Jews keep Jewing.
Yeah. But nothing about, have you ever noticed one thing about these men? and women, all of them, these Catholic influencers, they never speak about the corruption of the Roman Catholic Church. They never speak about the sexual molestation stuff, the embezzlement, the murders, the death, and they never speak about any of that. The only focus they have is on the Jews in Israel. That's it.
Okay, well, I don't mean to sound contrarian. I mean, there was a Catholic influencer. I guess he fell out of light a few years ago, or fell out of popularity a few years ago. Michael Burris. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not.
Okay. He became popular. He was like popular 10, 15 years ago. And, he talks about how much he hates Protestants and Baptists and so forth. Okay, but you expect that. But he's surprisingly honest about the corruption of the Catholic Church. Now, what he'll say, people like him will say, is this, the Catholic Church was pure as the driven snow until fairly recently, the 1960s, when the liberals, the Freemasons, the Jews infiltrated the Catholic Church, especially the Jesuits. So if we can just clean up the rot, get rid of the bad guys, and retake our seminaries and colleges and so forth, everything would be swell again. However, sorry, Mike, the Catholic Church has always been rotten.
Yep.
They created modern Freemasonry. And all your secret societies.
Yes, they did.
And that's something we'll have to talk about. Is the Catholic Church's open but false but secret but true policy when it comes to entities like the Freemasons.
Amen. All right, brother, let's do that. All right. If you want to mention everybody how they could get a hold of you, and let them know how they can get a hold of you in case they have any questions or anything, or maybe they want you to maybe they want us to cover something on a topic or something like that. You can leave your email address and everything.
Okay, tell you what, if they don't get it, I'll give out my email address, but they can email you and you can forward it on to me in case.
Absolutely.
So if people have any questions, comments, concerns, critiques, constructive criticism, please just email me at georgewidger1969@gmail.com. Just let me know where you're listening from, how long you could say, I've been listening since June the 18th, 2026. So, okay. So you've been listening that long. And, and if people have stuck it out the entire show, your long suffering is, longer than mine.
Well, amen. You know what, brother? They can learn a lot. There's a lot of good facts that were in there and a lot of good connections that are made. It helps people to understand, the kingdom of darkness, versus the Lord's kingdom. And that's just the way it is. But anyway, but God bless you, brother. And hopefully, Lord willing, we'll do it again and we'll pick another topic of something that'll be a blessing to folks. And we'll try to do it regularly and try to be a blessing to others. So I appreciate your time, brother, and appreciate, all that you do for the ministry of the Lord and getting the truth out to people and making these connections. And it's been a blessing to be on with you, brother.
Oh, likewise.
Amen. All right, everybody. All right. Well, God bless you, everybody. And I hope you, were blessed by this and share this with your friends and others that would be blessed by it. And if you'd like to give to our ministry, number one, pray for us. Pray for the Lord to bless us and to guide us and keep us. We need your prayers. That's absolutely important and vital. And number two, if you'd like to give to our ministry, you could do so through PayPal. That's salvationpreacher@gmail.com. Or you can give through Apple Pay, which is pastorcooley@icloud.com. You can give through Venmo, which is pastorcooley@icloud.com, or Zelle, which is 952-210-2935. Or you can mail it the old-fashioned way to 1030 Highway 3 South, Northfield, Minnesota, 55057. If you can't do anything, don't worry about it. You can pray and ask God to touch somebody else's heart who is in a position to be able to do that, okay? And God bless you all. Take care. And we'll see you again on the next broadcast here. Probably going to be Sunday morning, 10:45 a.m. We'll be talking about dating and courtship, the differences between those things, and try to give you the truth of that, okay? All right, everybody. God bless you. You take care.
And this old clay is gonna give way to glory. And like an eagle, well, I'll take to the sky. In a world filled with doubts and confusion, it's so hard when you don't understand. Oh, but I stand on that solid foundation, and I'll hold to God's unchanging hand. And the sun's coming up in the morning, and every tear will be gone from our eyes. And this old clay is gonna give way to glory. And like an eagle, I'll take to the skies. This old clay is gonna give way to glory.